Welcome to the podcast. Learn English through life, exploring emotions, connections, and the English language.
Have you ever had a moment in life where everything seemed fine on the outside, but inside you felt like you were sinking? Like no matter how hard you tried, you just couldn't find solid ground. It's a feeling that whispers at first, but then grows louder. Why am I even doing this? You're not alone. Millions of people experience moments like this. Moments where life feels heavy, directionless, and even hopeless. Today we're diving into this deeply human experience. I'm joined by two incredible guests who bring unique perspectives to this topic. First, let me introduce Sofia. She has bravely agreed to share her personal journey, one marked by pain, a profound sense of loss, and a moment when she felt there was no way out. Sofia, thank you for being here and for your courage to speak about this.
Thank you, Michael. It's not easy to talk about, but I truly believe that sharing our stories can make a difference for others who might be feeling the same way.
And alongside Sofia, we have Dr. James, a clinical psychologist with over 15 years of experience helping people navigate emotional challenges and find hope. Dr. James, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Michael. It's an important conversation to have. And I'm glad to be here to help shed some light on why we feel this way and how we can overcome it.
So in today's episode, we're going to explore Sofia's story, hear from Dr. James about the psychology behind these feelings, and discuss practical ways to move forward when life feels overwhelming. If you've ever felt lost, or if someone you care about has, stay with us. This conversation might just be the light you need. Sofia, thank you so much for joining us today. Your story is one that I think many people will connect with on a deep level. Can you start by telling us about your life and what brought you here?
Thank you, Michael. Well, I'm 37 years old, married, and I have two wonderful children. My daughter is 4, and my son is 7. I've been an English teacher in a high school for over a decade now. On the surface, my life looks stable. A good job, a supportive husband, 2 healthy kids. But inside, I've struggled with this feeling of emptiness for years. No matter what I do, it feels like it's never enough. I wake up every day asking myself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy?
That's a tough question to live with. Can you tell us more about when these feelings started?
I think it began in my early years of teaching. At first, I was so excited to be in the classroom. I wanted to inspire my students to make a difference in their lives. But as the years went on, I started to feel invisible. No matter how much effort I put into my lessons, there was always this nagging thought, you're not good enough. If a student failed, I blamed myself. If a parent complained, I thought, of course, it's my fault. Over time, those thoughts became louder and harder to ignore.
It sounds like you were holding yourself to an incredibly high standard. How did that affect your day-to-day life?
Honestly, it made everything feel like a struggle. I'd spend hours preparing lessons, then lie awake at night replaying everything that went wrong. I'd think, why didn't I explain that better? What if they don't respect me as a teacher? Even at home, I couldn't switch off that voice in my head. When I looked at my husband, I'd wonder if he was disappointed in me. With my kids, I'd feel guilty for not being more present. Every little thing felt like proof that I was failing, not just as a teacher, but as a person.
That inner critic can be so relentless. Did you try to talk to anyone about how you were feeling?
I tried, but it was hard to put into words. When I mentioned it to my husband, he said, "You're doing great. Don't be so hard on yourself." And while I appreciated his support, it didn't stop the voice in my head from saying, "He's just being kind. He doesn't see how much of a mess you are." At school, I kept a smile on my face because I didn't want my colleagues to think I couldn't handle it. But inside, I felt like I was slowly falling apart.
That must have been such a lonely experience, Sofia. Was there a moment when things reached a breaking point?
Yes. It was a few months ago, after a particularly rough day. A student had shouted at me in class, and later, I overheard some of them laughing about me in the hallway. I drove home feeling completely defeated. That night, after putting my kids to bed, I sat on the floor of the bathroom and cried for what felt like hours. I remember thinking, what's the point of all this? Why do I even try if I'm never going to be enough? For the first time, I seriously thought about giving up, on teaching, on everything. I felt like I was drowning in my own thoughts, and I didn't know how to make it stop.
That's such a heartbreaking image, Sophia. I'm so sorry you went through that. What happened next?
That night, I felt like I had reached the end. I truly believed that my family would be better off without me. I made the decision to end my life, thinking it was the only way to escape the pain and the feelings of failure that consumed me. But I survived. When I woke up in the hospital, I was told that my kidneys had been severely damaged and that I would need dialysis every week for the rest of my life. At first, I was angry that I hadn't succeeded, angry at myself for creating more problems for my family. But over time, as I adjusted to this new reality, something shifted in me.
What do you mean by something shifted? Can you tell us more about that moment?
I realized that the life I had been so desperate to escape was actually a gift I had been too blind to see. When I sat in that dialysis chair for the first time, surrounded by people who were fighting to live, I saw how much I had taken for granted. My health, my family, even my job. It wasn't an instant transformation, but slowly, I began to understand that my old life, the one I thought was unbearable, had been a paradise compared to where I was now. I started to reflect on everything I still had. A chance to see my kids grow up, a chance to make peace with myself. That realization was painful, but it also gave me the strength to fight. I promised myself that I would never take another moment for granted again.
Sophia, that's an incredibly powerful and humbling story. Thank you for sharing it so openly. I think your journey will inspire so many people to see their own lives from a different perspective. Dr. James, thank you for being here with us today. After hearing Sophia's story, it's clear that the feelings of emptiness and despair she experienced are more common than we might think. Can you help us understand why someone might feel this way, even if, on the outside, their life seems perfect?
Of course, Michael. Sophia's story is unfortunately not uncommon. Many people who seem to have everything, a stable job, a loving family, still feel unfulfilled or disconnected. This often stems from a combination of internal and external factors. Internally, low self-esteem plays a big role. Sophia mentioned that she felt she wasn't good enough as a teacher, a wife, or a mother. These thoughts create a negative internal dialogue that becomes difficult to silence. Externally, societal pressures and expectations can exacerbate these feelings. We live in a world that celebrates perfection and constant achievement. If you're not meeting these unrealistic standards, it's easy to feel like you're failing, even when you're doing your best.
That makes a lot of sense. But why do these feelings sometimes escalate to the point of considering suicide, as they did in Sophia's case?
Suicidal thoughts often emerge when someone feels trapped in their pain with no visible way out. In Sophia's case, she mentioned feeling like her family would be better off without her. This is a common distortion of reality caused by depression. The brain, under extreme emotional distress, starts to believe that removing oneself from the situation is the only solution. It's important to understand that these thoughts don't reflect the truth, but rather the overwhelming weight of untreated mental health issues like depression or anxiety.
What are some of the warning signs that someone might be feeling this way? How can their loved ones recognize and help them?
There are several signs to look out for. Behavioral changes, becoming withdrawn, losing interest in things they once loved, or changes in sleep and appetite. Verbal cues, statements like, "I'm tired of everything," or "it would be better if I weren't here." Emotional shifts, increased irritability, sadness, or hopelessness. If you notice these signs, the first step is to start a conversation. It doesn't have to be complicated. Something as simple as, I've noticed you seem different lately. Do you want to talk about it?
But what if someone is afraid to bring it up, worried that they might say the wrong thing?
That's a common fear, but it's important to remember that silence is far more harmful. You don't need to have the perfect words, that just show that you care. Saying, "I'm here for you and I want to help," can make a world of difference. It's also important to encourage professional help, like therapy or counseling. As Sofia's story shows, reaching out for help can be life-changing, even if it feels difficult at first.
That's such valuable advice, Doctor. James, how can someone start to rebuild their life after surviving something as traumatic as Sophia's experience?
Rebuilding begins with small steps. For someone like Sofia, who now faces the physical challenges of dialysis, it's about focusing on what she can do rather than what she's lost. Here are 3 key areas to focus on. Self-compassion. Acknowledge that healing takes time and that it's okay to feel vulnerable. Connection. Reconnect with loved ones and allow them to support you. Loneliness only deepens the pain. Purpose. Find meaning in small things, whether it's spending time with family, pursuing a hobby, or helping others. Ultimately, it's about recognizing that life, even with its challenges, is worth living and full of opportunities for growth and joy.
Thank you, Dr. James. That perspective is so hopeful and grounding. I think many of our listeners will find your insights incredibly helpful. Now that we've heard Sophia's story and Dr. James's insights, I'd like to open up a dialogue between the two of you. Sophia, as someone who has lived through this experience, are there any questions or thoughts you'd like to share with Dr. James?
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Dr. James, one thing I still struggle with is this overwhelming guilt. Guilt for how my actions affected my family, for the pain I caused them, and for not being the perfect mom or wife. How do I let go of that guilt?
Sophia, I want to start by saying that your feelings of guilt are completely valid and very common in situations like yours. But here's an important truth. Guilt is often tied to the unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves. You've already taken an important step by recognizing the impact of your actions and working to rebuild those relationships. What's crucial now is to practice self-compassion. Ask yourself, would I judge someone else as harshly as I judge myself? Probably not. One technique I recommend is writing a letter to yourself from the perspective of someone who loves you, like your child or your husband. What would they say about the strength you've shown? This exercise can help shift your perspective and ease the weight of guilt.
That makes sense. I've never thought about it that way. I'll try that. Another question I have is about my kids. They're still young, but I worry about how this might affect them as they grow up. How can I make sure they feel safe and supported?
That's a wonderful question, and it shows how much you care about them. The most important thing you can do is model healthy emotional behavior. Be open about your feelings in an age-appropriate way. For example, if you're having a hard day, you can say, "Mommy feels a little sad today, but it's okay because I know it will pass." This teaches them that emotions are normal and that it's okay to talk about them. Also, spending quality time with them, even in small ways, reading together, playing a game, creates a sense of security and connection. Children thrive on love and presence, not perfection.
Those are such thoughtful questions, Sophia. Dr. James, if I may, I'd like to ask something that I think many listeners might wonder. How do we stop ourselves from falling into the trap of constantly comparing our lives to others?
That's a great question, Michael. Comparison is a natural human tendency, but in today's world, it's amplified by social media and societal expectations. The key is to focus on your own journey and define success on your terms. A practical exercise is to create a gratitude list every evening. Write down 3 things you're thankful for, no matter how small. Over time, this shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have. Another strategy is to limit your exposure to things that trigger comparison, whether that's certain social media accounts or even conversations. Protecting your mental space is just as important as protecting your physical health.
I love that idea of a gratitude list. I've been so focused on what I've lost that I've forgotten to appreciate what I still have.
That's a beautiful takeaway, Sophia. Dr. James, thank you for sharing these insights. It's been incredible to see how your expertise and Sophia's courage come together to create such a meaningful conversation. As we come to the end of this conversation, I'd like each of you to share a message of hope or a key takeaway for our listeners. Sophia, let's start with you. What would you like to say to someone who might be feeling the same emptiness you once felt?
I would say to anyone who feels lost or empty right now, don't give up on yourself. I know it feels like the pain will last forever, but it won't. There is a way out of the darkness, even if you can't see it yet. I learned that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to not have all the answers. Life isn't about being perfect. It's about trying, failing, and finding strength in the small victories. Even sitting here today, I'm still healing, but I'm proof that healing is possible.
That's so powerful, Sophia. Thank you. Dr. James, what would you like to share with our audience?
My message is this: you are not alone in your struggles, even if it feels that way. Emotions like sadness, fear, or hopelessness are part of being human, but they don't define you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take one small step, whether that's reaching out to a friend, writing your thoughts in a journal, or seeking professional help. Small actions can create big changes over time. And remember, healing isn't linear. Some days will be harder than others, but that doesn't mean you're not making progress. Celebrate every step forward, no matter how small.
Those are both such meaningful takeaways. For me, what stands out from this conversation is that life is precious, even when it feels overwhelming. Sometimes the most difficult chapters can lead to the most beautiful transformations. To everyone listening, if you're struggling, know that there is help available and there is hope. Share your story, connect with others, and remember, you don't have to go through this alone. Thank you, Sophia, for your courage in sharing your journey, and Dr. James for your invaluable insights, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself.